and the City of Sioux Falls Planning Commissions. And I'm going to begin with a few introductory comments. The two planning commissions work together on land use and zoning matters within the rural areas surrounding the city. This area is displayed on the screen. After information and testimony is presented on an agenda item, the members will discuss the matter, then each planning commission will vote independently to arrive at a decision. A final action taken on the continual use permit request will take effect 5 working days following this meeting unless a written appeal of tonight's decision is filed in the County Planning Office by Monday, February 4th, 2019 at 5 p.m. In the event of an appeal, the decision will be referred to the County Commission and City Council for a joint hearing on Tuesday, February 26, 2019 at 5 p.m. This meeting is held in Carnegie Down Hall at 235 West 10th Street. Action regarding this rezoning item will be automatically heard by the County Commission and City Council for joint at a public hearing on Tuesday, February 26th at 5 p.m. First on the agenda is public input. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to an item that is not on the agenda? At this time, the planning commissions will consider the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are perceived to be non-controversial and meet all of the requirements of the codes and regulations. The consent agenda will be acted on in one motion with no public hearing on the items unless a member of the public, the commission, or staff requests the item to be removed from the consent agenda. The minutes from the November 26, 2018 meeting are included in the consent agenda. Does any planning commission members wish to have any item removed for discussion? Next, I will read each item on the consent agenda and ask if there are any issues or comments from the staff or the audience. If any member of the staff or audience would like to be heard on the item, please raise your hand. Then the item will be moved to the regular agenda to allow you to address the commissions later in the meeting. And then any other items remaining on the consent agenda will be approved by the Planning Commission with the conditions recommended by staff. The first item on the consent agenda is the approval of minutes of the November 26, 2018 meeting. Item number 2 is conditional use permit 19-03 to amend CUP 17-09 to exceed 1,600 square feet of total accessory building area, requesting 2,480 square feet, and to retain all existing buildings on the property legally described as Tract 49, West Acres, Southwest Quarter, Section 17, Township 101 North, Range 50 West. The petitioner is John McCarthy. He's also the property owner, and the address is 46715 Buckeye Street. It's located approximately 1 mile west of Sioux Falls. Okay, so neither of those items. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve it.
Second.
Motion's been approved to do item number 1 and number 2 on the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
City sign?
Gaspar makes motion to approve consent agenda.
Johnson, second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
If your item was approved on the consent agenda, you are free to leave. We'll move on to the regular agenda. Scott?
Good evening, Scott Anderson, County Planning. Item number 3 is a rezoning request, 1805, to rezone approximately 30.5 acres from A1 Agriculture District to the Laurel Ridge Plan Development District. You may recall this was an item that we discussed at length at our last meeting, which was November 26th, and at that time, it was continued until tonight's meeting in order for the applicant to hold a neighborhood meeting and to you directed him also to obtain some traffic study information. He held a neighborhood meeting, I believe, on December 6th, and I'll let the applicant relay what happened at that meeting and what occurred. He also provided quite a bit of traffic information from HDR, which was included in your packet for your review. And once again, for those in the, sort of a refresher for the people in the audience, I'll go through generally what the applicant is requesting and then followed up by what our staff's recommendation is. So this is the general area. It's about 3/4 of a mile off of Jim Sweep Highway, off of Slip Up Creek Road. And the applicant is basically requesting a plan development consisting of 3 sub-areas. Sub-area A is the commercial sub-area, which consists of an event facility, wedding barn, hosting facility. The second area, sub-area B, which is shown in the red, is the largest portion of the proposed plan development, and that is to remain ag. And then followed up by sub-area C, which is a residential component, which was the applicant would like to develop that into 7 residential lots. So those are the 3 sub-areas that the applicant is requesting, and staff is recommending approval of sub-area A and B and not recommending approval of any residential development component of the plan development, which would be sub-area C. In your packet, you will find 2 proposed ordinances that, for your review. The first ordinance has regulations and guidelines for sub-area A, B, and C. The second proposed ordinance only has sub-areas A and B, which would be the wedding barn, hosting facility, or event center, whatever we'd like to call the hosting facility, and an agricultural component. So I'll go through the slides again just to give you, refresh your memory of generally what the property looks like. You can see it's generally a river valley. A small creek flows through it, Slip Up Creek, which goes into the Big Sioux River, and taken in much nicer climate and times in November. But this shows you generally the property. I'm standing at the entrance of the newly created driveway that would go down to the events hosting facility. I'm looking to the northeast where Slip Up Creek Road turns and starts going north. This is looking at the driveway, also looking straight back west towards the county highway, Jim Sweep Highway. This is you can see the newly created driveway approach, looking straight south at where that wedding events facility would occur or would be built. Where the road curves, you can see south of that is where the proposed events facility would be constructed. This is generally the site. This is, this is down where the wedding facility would be constructed, or the hosting barn, looking straight north towards the Slip Up Creek Road. Just shows some of the agricultural area. There were horses grazing in the area. You can see the field there. This is looking straight east where the proposed residential development would occur on the other side of the creek on that bluff, on that hill. So I will be glad to answer any questions that you have, and I will leave it on this map showing the proposed sub-areas. Can I answer any questions?
Thanks, Scott. Is the petitioner here? Will you please come forward, state your name and address, please?
I'm Tyler Childress, address 47677 Slip Up Creek Road. Last meeting, your staff recommended approval of rezoning 18-05 to sub-area A, the commercial wedding use. My homework that I went and did, step 1 was to hold a neighborhood meeting. That was held in the Mapleton Township, and we had quite a good turnout, and it was more informational. And we discussed future use of land, Sioux Falls future growth, Sioux Falls, Minnehaha County Joint Area, safety, hours operation, business event information, spot zoning, and other concerns. The meeting went very well and was an open forum and had many questions answered. An opportunity to have a second meeting was voted down by the neighborhood. The second requirement was a traffic study. Jason at HDR completed a traffic study discussion memo that you guys should have there as well. In this memo, it explained what you've all been supplied with. A traffic counter was also supplied and put on Slip Up Creek Road, and we have that information for you there as well. The typical threshold to meet warrants for a turn lane on CR 125 was a concern last time, and Jason, which is the vice president of HDR, said that's not likely due to the low volume of traffic my use would have. Traffic counts have been performed and are continuously performed on the county roads. The township issued a driveway permit. The county staff recommending approval. The mayor has shown favor with these types of uses. I have met all requirements and hope we can see the long hours and all preparation that we've had into this. Sioux Falls weddings deserve this. The veterans deserve this. I would urge the panel to vote approval for the beautiful and harmonious application. If you have any questions, I'd love to answer those now.
Jeff?
Tyler, how do you feel about the sub-area C being declined as far as residential?
Yeah, it was more my long-term goal of what the property is going to be like. And when I say long-term, you know, I have to fit within the requirements that the city is going to grow out there. They're saying 2030 to 2040 for that. So it bums me out right now, but, you know, going forward long-term, it could be optional. We'd have to figure out a better access to the east side of the creek there. But I understand why that is. Yep.
Any other questions for petitioner?
I got one. At the last meeting, there was some concern from people that were here about the cemetery that might be coming in or will be coming in. Was that brought up at your neighborhood meeting, and what was the thought about that?
Yeah, it was. Unfortunately, I felt I took much of the brunt. A lot of people didn't understand what was happening, what change was coming to the neighborhood. Due to the cemetery being ag, there was not a application for rezoning, so many people didn't quite understand what that meant and how that would affect them. So there are a lot of frustrations and feelings felt by that, and I had to overcome those objections, and we worked through those. You know, whether my project comes or goes, that one's coming, and the use is going to change. You know, mine fits well with that use, and yeah, we went over in detail. We got a scope letter, and we didn't provide that. Just the local residents received kind of a scope letter from the Veterans Association. And I'm not sure if anyone in the city or county has seen that yet, and I can provide that. But it just explains kind of the layout and how it's going to be and where the entrances are, and just kind of an initial design and drawing. I would have you guys all reach out to the Veterans Council and get more informed too, because it seems like no one really knows anything about that at all. And I'm having to do all the legwork behind the scenes to make sure I meet all the needs of the
Well, that's
people.
kind of what I was getting at, because you had to do the total road study, and
Yeah.
you're basically doing it for them.
Yep. Jason and I from HDR had a long conversation about that, and both our uses don't have enough use to constitute a traffic study. It's non-peak hours, and it's off hours. So the use is not typically what he sees in a traffic study. So both my project and their project, in his eyes, again, vice president of the company, don't see it as a needed step of the process, because the use is going to be off-peak Saturdays, Sundays, nights, that kind of stuff. So that's how they see that. They see peak between 7:30 and 9 and peak between 4:30 and 6, and that's not going to be when my traffic or their traffic is going to be.
Any other questions? You may be called back.
Yep, no problem. Thank you.
Are there any other proponents out there? State your name and address, please.
Kyle Kosan Construction, 4412 North Hillcrest, Sioux Falls, 57104. I just wanted to stand up and show support. Well, we're looking at creating a beautiful event venue that'll service the community, both local area and Sioux Falls. We want to create an atmosphere that brides and grooms can be proud of. We believe it's a perfect location, very close proximity to Sioux Falls and in the near growth of the city. We are going to be utilizing a lot of locally sourced subs and suppliers, and though we may not have a huge economic impact, we will have some, and it'll be from everyone from subs, DJs, suppliers, catering, anything like that. One other thing we want to mention is we'll talk to our suppliers and subs about roadway safety during the construction process, and make sure we keep it safe for the residents in the area if we've got construction traffic moving and those items. I feel time is of the essence, and I feel like we've gone through all the necessary steps to move forward with the project and complied with all the requirements of the joint council. And I guess I would strongly encourage you guys to vote in favor of it.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other proponents? Is there any opponents out there in the crowd? Please state your name and address, please.
Can everybody stand up that's from the neighborhood area out there, Slip Up Creek? Everybody that's from the area, neighborhood? Just to give you an idea of what our concerns are and why everybody's here. I'm Mark Dawson. I'm from 47649 Sorrell Street. I'm less than a quarter of a mile from, my house is less than a quarter of a mile due northwest from this area that the event center is proposed to go in. We have some concerns. The safety of the traffic. If you noticed on the slide that he presented before, gentleman to my right, there's a sharp curve to the east of the driveway that goes up to the motocross Saddleback. There is significant traffic on that dirt road coming from Saddleback most of the year, actually. Do ice races out there and different stuff quite a bit. So that with the event center traffic is a concern for me and some others. The other thing that's a concern is, safety-wise, is Slip Up Creek Road itself. The residents in Andy's Acres paid for that road to be paved, the township. That road has no shoulders. The paved part has no shoulders. It doesn't have any even dirt shoulders on it. It has steep ditches on each side of it. We're concerned about the construction traffic going in there. We're concerned about the electrical and the other facilities going in there for water, et cetera, and all the traffic, construction traffic on that road that's about whether it's going to be able to handle that or not. So the other thing is because there's also a hill to the west, as he showed us on the slide, you can see up the hill. What you didn't see at the crest of that hill is the first residential house on the north side of the road, and they continue all the way to the county road. There's a few of us residents out there that came to the meetings. You can imagine how many more live in that area, Andy's Acres. We're across, right next to my property is the southern boundary of the state cemetery, the Veteran Cemetery. And there's a field that separates that to the Slip Up Creek Road, and right across the road is the event center. A lot of us, I speak for myself and some others, there's some others that may come up and say differently, but I do not believe that is congruent and acceptable to have an event center there across from the Veteran Cemetery. If this goes in, our other concern is if it gets to be commercial, there's ag land out there and residential property only. We're concerned that this will continue with more commercial property. And what if this event center should, for whatever reason, I do appreciate the entrepreneurship of a gentleman, but, you know, if it goes, it changes hands, and somebody else wants to come in and do something else commercial with the property, this is a concern for us as well. The noise, 7 days a week out there, combined with the motocross, but that event center is very close, is right across the street from the southeast end of Andes Acres residential area. I just want to run down a few items. I don't want to take very long on it. There are other people here that want to speak. But I just want to let you know that we have our doubts and we have our concerns with all this going on out there, with what it'll do to the neighborhood, not the ambiance so much, but safety as well, and what it'll do to the traffic and the road itself out there. Okay, this is not a county road. It's a Mapleton Township road. Thank you.
Mr. Dawson, is your house visible on this map, the photo? Are you, where you live?
Yeah, it's trying to get myself oriented here. Sorrel Street, yeah. Okay. This is Slip Up Creek, is that right? No, this is Slip Up Creek.
That's
My
Andy's.
house is right there.
Okay,
Almost got to do it. Right there.
thank you.
And there's another lot right between me, a house, another lot, not a house, between me and Slip Up Creek Road.
Thank you.
I'll stand by if anybody has any other questions.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other opposition that would like to speak? State your name and address, please.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Bechtold. I live at 47614 Slip Up Creek Road. I've got one question and then just a couple of points. The question is, do any of, this is going to be a planned urban development or a PUD or, and from the meeting last time, the comment was made that because of that, some restrictions could be put on it or conditions. Is that correct?
Conditions can be put on it.
Yes.
Okay, beyond just the zoning. Okay? My question is, do any restrictions or conditions that you put on this operation, do they run with the property? Or if the owner or the operator changes, do the conditions continue on the property for any subsequent use? In other words, if the wedding facility or barn changes operation, do the conditions that might be put on it continue on the property?
Yes, they do.
Okay, thank you. Then observations, I guess what I'd like to have considered for conditions, and we talked somewhat of this matter at the last meeting, the hours of operation. Is it going to be restricted to end at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 midnight, or what? But I think there should be some stipulation as to the hours allowed to operate the facility. How long will these parties or events continue? The second thing, and we talked about it last time too, is a restriction on outside activities. In other words, are they going to have live music, bands, speakers outside? I would like that restricted or eliminated. There's a concern about litter control up and down Slip Up Creek in front of our residences. There are approximately 40 houses within a mile of this operation. I think the operator should be responsible for control of litter, picking it up. I know our township man picks up things from mattresses to who knows what out there, but if he's going to have things going on multiple times a week, I think the litter problem would be increased, and I think it should be his responsibility. We've talked about traffic. I would like to have traffic, no parking on Slip Up Creek. They should all be down by the barn. No parking on Slip Up Creek. There is no There is no shoulder, that's been mentioned, and I think it'd be a real traffic hazard if people parked up on the road. I'd like a limit on outside lighting. When I moved out there 46 years ago, there were not even any lights on the interchange between 229 and 90. There's lights there now, and the darn things cast a shadow when I'm out in my yard and I'm a mile away from it. Other intersections with newer lighting have shades where they just shade the light down. I don't think there should be any light pollution off the property. In other words, light shining out. I've got a property in rural South Dakota, and there's a car dealership 4 miles away, and those lights shine clear over to my property 4 miles away. I'm also not very fond of the Sanford blue lights, but there's probably damn little I could do about that. And some are not aware. I would guess there will be times when there will be an event at the barn when there is a cemetery, a procession, a funeral procession coming down Slip Up Creek. I know that all people are not aware of protocol on when a cemetery procession goes by. But I think the operator should be required to have somebody at the gate. So when, not all times, but when there is a funeral procession coming down, to prevent cars from leaving his property, cutting through the procession, cutting in front of it, or basically interrupting the ceremony. Those are my comments. Any questions that you have of me?
Thank you.
You bet.
State your name and address, please.
Ryan Bechtold, 47610 Slip Up Creek, right next to my dad. Just a couple quick things. The area that your future home is going to be built on, when will that be built? Planned.
He can address that later.
Okay.
Just raise the
Um,
questions.
Yes,
and-
ma'am. The other thing is the respect of the board. I was here last meeting, and just a couple comments. Mr. Barth made a comment that we don't live in a museum. You're gonna insult us. It's not a museum we'd wanna live in. It's a preserve. We wanna keep the things the way they are, agriculture and residential. That's why we moved out there. The other comment from Kurt Johnson for calling the police or sheriff whenever someone's speeding or doing something naughty. They appreciate the uptick in phone calls. They know they don't have the manpower to protect us all the time. So those are my two complaints for the board. The other thing is, as a veteran, I missed the meeting that you held. I appreciate the meeting. I wasn't there. I had drill that weekend. As a veteran, and I'll hopefully be buried out there someday, along with my wife, I don't see how the two fit. I understand it's gonna happen, and I know it's probably gonna happen, because hopefully I'll get a job bartending or working with my rescue group. We'll probably rent your facility in the future. But that was the biggest thing. The comments you people made at the end of it, you don't seem to take into account the way the neighbors feel. 41 houses up there, 40 houses up there, it doesn't seem like you take into account the way we live, the way we are. You're not allowed to go out there and check the property out beforehand, I understand. I don't understand that. And the other thing I don't understand is how the city can dictate what people can do out there, but I can't vote for the city on anything the city does, since I don't live inside city limits. But they can tell us what we can and can't do in our own neighborhoods. So those are my main issues.
Anyone else care to speak?
Brad Thill, 25985 477th Avenue. I'm right next to the adjoining property that they want rezoned. As far as anybody that, I've talked to a lot of people that most of the people that live in the area, none of them are for this project. It seems to be getting lumped together with the Veterans Cemetery, and we're not here to tread on the Veterans Cemetery. I want that to be known. But at the same time, you have to admit that that cemetery is going to create a ton of traffic for our area. You're looking at 2-3 funerals a day on some days. If they're an average of 100 cars per funeral, you're looking at 300 vehicles going down a 2-lane street with no shoulders, hills, dead ends, curves, and most of it's gravel. So, adding in this, the motorcycle track, the veteran cemetery, and, giant bar, you know, we could be looking at 800 to 1,000 vehicles a day. And that's outrageous for that type of, road. And I'd have to say a professional, safety study would have to be done, because right now what you're looking at is just us rural people living there and what goes on at the motorcycle track. And we all say there's too much traffic already just from that. So, lump it all together is kind of the feeling I'm getting here. And when you do that, it's overwhelming for traffic. And nobody's gotten an answer to working with the roads or adding new roads in. The state's turned it down, the city turns it down, the county turns it down, the township doesn't want anything to do with it and can't afford it. So who's got answers to all this traffic? And all that traffic's gonna create problems with emergency vehicles. It's a volunteer fire department. And it's the sheriff's department that already can't even keep up with the dumping out there, as well as the trespassing that goes on in the area, and several other things. So who's gonna police this situation when you got 400 people out there getting drunk on a Saturday night? Anybody got an answer for that kind of stuff? Those are just part of the concerns that we're looking at. Most of it comes right back to child safety. I'm a school bus driver for Brandon School District, and we have that area. And there's definite stress when they have to pick up children and drop them off in that area. The Jim Zweep Road alone is crazy busy. The 35-mile-an-hour speed limit zone there is totally ignored most times, and the sheriff's department is unable to do anything about it. So we're not getting answers back to what we know is gonna be major issues, and I wish somebody had answers. And again, just to reiterate, most of these people paid for that, what little blacktop is out there, and they're gonna get nothing but damaged roads out of the deal. And I don't think you answered the sewage problem fully either. When you have that many people at one facility, how are they gonna control the sewage? Right now, there's no public sewage system out there, and I don't think you can buy tanks big enough to hold all the sewage water that will come from that. So a lot of issues that have not been answered, and I'd have to reject anything where they don't actually come out and study the traffic, especially in the dead of winter when it's the slowest. And you know, those things aren't set up and operating at this time. You know, we don't have 200 vehicles from a funeral going through right now. So what's a traffic safety study supposed to tell you? It tells me that common sense says that a 2-lane road, most of it's gravel and curved and hilly and dead end, and there's one way in and one way out, that somebody needs to come up with some answers for roads. Because that road cannot handle it. There's no way. And the state turned us down already. We've talked to them. This is a state cemetery. We don't have any plans for putting roads in. Is the city gonna put roads in? Is the county gonna put roads in? Because I'll guarantee you, one 2-lane road isn't gonna suffice. There's no way. Any questions?
Madam Chair, I have a question. Mr. Thill, I wasn't here my name is Steve Gaspar. I wasn't here at the first meeting. My question is Did the Veterans Administration tell you that they're gonna have 3 a day? 3 funerals a day, every day? Where are you getting that information?
From what goes on out in the Black Hills partly, how many funerals they have.
Okay, that's a question I'm asking, because I wasn't here.
Sir, you're out of order.
So I'm asking Mr. Thill this, so, yeah,
Yeah,
so,
it's that kind of information
okay,
we've been.
so that's where it came from. Again, I just need to know because I wasn't
Well, they,
part of
and
that
they
first
sent
meeting.
that survey out too, to some of us, and they sent, filled it out and sent it back. And some of the other concerns were, what about all the traffic? What are you gonna do for that? Are you planning any more roads? Are you planning on widening Slip Up Creek Road? And they said they have no plans whatsoever of putting any roads in.
Okay,
You got motorcycle track, cemetery, and now you wanna put a huge bar out there too, on roads that cannot handle it.
but it was the Veterans Administration that has actually said that there's probably gonna be about 2,600
Yeah,
a year. Okay.
they average,
that was
a
the question I
funeral
was
every
asking.
20 minutes, on Saturdays out in the Black Hills,
Okay,
every 20 minutes. That's a lot of traffic flow. And you, tell me, how's that 2-lane road supposed to handle all that traffic?
that's not part of my question. The question, I just needed to know that part.
That's my question.
Yep.
I'm asking. Nobody's giving us answers. I'm not against the vets. I'm all for the vets. But we really didn't know the zoning commission was acting on that cemetery either at the time. So we didn't get in here to voice it. And we're not opposed to a cemetery being there, but we are opposed to getting trampled by traffic. There's no two ways about it. You're gonna have a lot of traffic. And now you add a bar to this scenario too, and you take a Saturday night where they're having races up the road too. There's one way in, one way out on that road. There's no two ways about it. 477th doesn't go through, it comes up to Slip Up Creek comes up to 477th Avenue. And that's it. No way, other way in or out.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you. Any other opposition out there? I'll take a couple more, and then we'll have the petitioner come up, and then I'm gonna close the floor.
Hi, I'm John Beck and my wife Tina Beck. We live at 47645 Sorrel Street. We live approximately a fourth of a mile away from the site.
We're 2 houses down from Dawson that was up here.
At the last meeting here, the question was brought up about noise control, and I believe it was said that local county ordinances would be followed for noise control. We did a little checking and we couldn't find out anything about any noise restrictions in the county. We were curious if somebody could help us with an answer to that. And if there isn't one, I'd like to suggest that some sort of restrictions be placed on the proposed development for noise control. The other question is about traffic and the safety of all the people that live out in the area right now and the safety of the proposed development for the event center and the cemetery. I think one good suggestion would be, let's wait and see how traffic really turns out with the Veterans Cemetery first before allowing this facility to be built. And then we'll know right away how this road's gonna be impacted. We've heard both sides that it can take the traffic because the veterans are gonna build their cemetery. And we've heard from a lot of people concerned that there's no way it's gonna be able to handle all the traffic. And I agree with what was said before. There was a traffic study done recently. I haven't seen that report, but I agree that if it was done within the last month, it's not gonna really show what really happens out there when that road gets busy with motorcycles and these other proposed facilities.
Because there is a 35-mile-an-hour speed zone that is not followed by the majority of people that drive out there that don't live out there. There's a 35 mile an hour on the Jim Zweep, that I have been passed going 35 in a no passing zone. Same things happen there. Nobody's following the speed zone.
And as other people have said, the sheriff's overwhelmed already. They don't have enough people patrolling the area to try to maintain speeds, a safe speed. And I can't see any way with limited resources that they'll be able to control traffic coming in and out of this area with future expansion.
Especially when you got people drinking.
That's
Any
all
other
I have.
comments?
Excuse me?
You have any other comments?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Any other opposition? I will make it perfectly clear, if you have something new to say, you can say it. Otherwise, there's no reason in reiterating what we've already heard.
My name
Address,
is,
please.
my name is Russ Christensen, and my wife Robin. We live at 47628 Slip Up Creek, which is right on the highway. And this is a bit of a reiteration, but I want to reiterate it. And the fact is that the racetrack right now, the kids that come out there, their adrenaline is running. They're running late, but not only that, but their adrenaline is going, and you should see them when the race is over. It's still going, and they think they're at the Indy 500. I sit right on the highway. We have 10 grandchildren, under 11 and under, and they all live in this area, and our house, our yard, is the central meeting location for those kids and those families. And it will ruin the traffic. The additional traffic is just going to take away from our serenity, from our children's safety, and that's why we came here. That's all I really wanted to state.
We've also lost pets too on that road already just from the racetrack traffic. So it's just going to be noise pollution just from the traffic alone. And I grew up in this area and then came back to, we had bought a house after someone had put it up for sale, and we didn't expect that to happen, and that was only 3 years ago, but we didn't expect this event center and the cemetery to go in. So it kind of ruins the property value of ours too. We're not opposed to the cemetery, but like everybody else was saying, that you've got the combination of all three, and it's just going to be too much, and we're not going to feel safe having our grandkids outside or our dogs outside. So that's what we wanted to say.
That's about all we've got. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Opposition?
Yeah, I'm Scott Zwak, 47646 Slip Up Creek Road. Actually, I'm the one that gets to see all these people come flying down the gravel road on the last house on that road. That's two big concerns, which everybody said, is the road and noise. I mean, they're down there in the bottom, and if you stand up in my place, you can see right down to where that building's gonna be, and any noise is gonna come right up over the top of us. And just to go to show how bad the noise travels, Sanford Lab over there, yearly, they have a big party. You can sit in my front room and hear the music, and that's going over the top of the interstate and everything else. So I think if this is even considered, there's got to be some sort of decibel at 100 foot or 50 foot or something, because we're all going to be complaining about it. And as far as the traffic goes, now I sent the letter to, or the state sent me a letter about the cemetery, asking any concerns. And my concern was the road and traffic. And as everybody said, you know, they don't have no plans of doing anything on the road, but one thing they are going to do is any construction traffic has to come in from the north, and basically in the letter, they said that road, they do not feel is gonna hold up to the traffic. So are we going to make sure that road, falls apart and let something else go in there without knowing about it? And, you know, the other thing is what money does the township have to fix that road? I happened to get my taxes the other day and I was reading through it. There is such of a small amount of my taxes that go to fix that road. It's unbelievable. And that's all something that's gotta be looked at. I mean, we're gonna be back to a gravel road is what's gonna happen here. So, that's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone? You have to come back up to the podium.
Robin Christensen, you want my address again? Do you need my address
You
again?
should say it, please.
47628 Slip Up Creek Road, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 57104. If this does go through, I would suggest that they put some kind of speed bumps or something in front of that area where we live, or have it more enforced on speed limits there. Because even this morning, drinking coffee out our front window, a car went by that street probably 60 miles an hour. And to my understanding, it's supposed to be 35. So there needs to be something to control the speed on that road mainly. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else? Come on, Todd.
Don Oschlager, Mapleton Township. I'd like to just once again address the road issue. On January 8th, I was contacted by Stephen Palmer, state engineer, working with the Veterans Cemetery. Everybody says that they're telling them that nothing is going to be done to that road. I beg to argue that eventually something will be done to that road. I think we all know that a gravel road going into the Veterans Cemetery is unacceptable. And he asked about weight limits on the two bridges coming in off of 258. So when they say that there's only one way in and one way out, I believe a lot of Saddleback traffic is out on 258 as well as coming around. Some of the Sioux Falls traffic, I believe they're correct, that comes in on slip up. There will be some road improvements eventually. I know there's some legislators that are working on it. We don't know. I mean, it's the unknowns that everyone is fearful of. As far as Mapleton Township, we're asking that Tyler would do some dust control, some magnesium chloride on the gravel portion of it. He's agreed to that. We gave him a driveway permit, believing that his event center was a good fit to the neighborhood. I'm one of 3 township board supervisors. 2 of us visited the site for the driveway permit, and 2 of us were at the open meeting. I need to remain neutral as a township board supervisor. We do roads and fire. And I think the road, the residents that are here are correct if they invested in blacktop on the road. I also believe that I, as a township board supervisor, would have that proposed to me. I would deny that. I don't think it's ever a good idea for the public to invest in for the public to invest in a public right-of-way like they did. And they did it because the road was very hard to maintain. It went on for a long time. I was not on the board at the time. And they invested their money in a public right-of-way. What happens when the public right-of-way falls apart? We allocate $6,000 a year to 1.5 miles of blacktop. The reason we do that is because our average cost of roads and road maintenance is approximately $4,000 a mile, which includes motor grader, operator, insurance, gravel product. That's what it takes to operate. So we allocate $6,000 towards blacktop every year. So far, we've been able to crack seal and chip seal it. You know, I don't know that the automobile traffic, it's posted at 6 ton, and we did that to keep the heavy trucks off of it, obviously. And the car traffic, the cemetery traffic, you know, I'm not an engineer. I don't know that that's gonna have that much effect on that road. Obviously, any traffic affects the road, I get that. As a township, we weren't opposed. We would have never given the driveway permit if we thought that this was going to be a big issue. I think the bigger issue for us was the cemetery, but we've kind of got some assurances that we know that eventually there's going to be some road improvement there. And there needs to be. There's another half mile of our road on 72nd, East 72nd. That road traffic is 100 times what slip up is. And it's difficult to keep that gravel in shape, but that road eventually will get taken over either by the city through development there, or perhaps the county. So funding is an issue, whether it be the township, the county, or the state. But I know that what you see there now is not going to be what you see there in time to come. I don't know how soon it's going to happen, but I know that there is people in Pierre working on it. I wish it were done now prior to this, but unfortunately it's not. Any questions?
How many miles of asphalt do you have in your township then, that you have to maintain?
Mile and a half.
That's it?
We have another development that is, that they have their own funding sources. We have a street that has their own funding sources through funding for assessments. We have a road district, so, yeah, a mile and a half for us.
Okay.
I would have liked to seen it go to a road district. If it were to happen again, I believe that that's probably the way it would go. Well, so, yeah,
Thank you, Don.
you're welcome.
Madam Chairman, before you close the floor, can I make a couple comments?
Sure, Scott, go ahead.
I want to make sure everyone has their time to speak, so I'll do it after everyone's done.
Any other opposition? Okay. Petitioner, you want to come forward again? I think you had something to say as well.
Part of my duty as a developer is to make sure everyone's heard, make sure everyone's understood, and to just hear everyone out. So I just want to kind of go over a couple of the hot points of them. Rick at Saddleback, he's I'm not sure his exact title, but he was the one that purchased land, runs the operation there. He said that 80% of his traffic comes from the north. That's him spitballing it. That's him just giving me his random estimates. So that's what he's understanding. You know, these barns are starting to become more popular, and they're starting to show up more and more. There was just one approved, Emerald Pines. That's on the opposite side of town. There's been one that's approved, Blue Haven. They're adding a second location to that same commercial site. So these businesses are working. My goal was to cater towards weddings, and the cemetery happened. As far as safety, I've got 3 kids, 1 on the way. My wife is actually here. We're 3 days past due, so any day we could have to go for our 4th. We plan to build a house there, so we would not put any residents or anything there that would jeopardize safety. We homeschool our kids. We will be there all the time. This is part of a lifestyle that we are trying to choose. A couple things as far as on the raceway, and I did some research on there. They actually do not have a conditional use permit. What that allows them to do is to have a 24-hour event if they so choose. They can have noise whenever they want, inside, outside. Mine would be more restricted and would have a conditional use permit. So we'd be much more understanding to that as well. There were on Jim Zweep, HDR and the traffic study estimated a 0.08 difference due to adding us. That's what the difference of us, of the business that we put out there, would add to that location, 0.08. As far as sewage, we would have that state engineered, everything would be taken care of there. There would be no issues. It would have to be permitted and signed off by the state. I've been talking to, it feels like, everybody in the Veteran Cemetery. And the numbers that I've received is 240 to 260 per year, not 2,600. So there's a discrepancy in the numbers there. The Veteran Cemetery has no food, has no drinks allowed on there at all. You can't get a barbecue. You can't have a meeting after. It's designed to quick in, take care of your respects, and then back out. There's no place anywhere close that allows families, people who travel from long ways away, to have events in there. Just want to kind of understand what our synergy is to that. Steve mentioned multiple of conditions, and I think they're all within reason. When you're out there on the property I have and you look all around, you can see lights of one house. There's a brand new house right on Slip Up Creek, kind of in, I believe it's the second or third, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure. The brand new house that was built, that you can see one light out there. I've been told that the cemetery will have lights, then could be 24-hour access. Lights could be on all night, could be shining bright. Our goal is to shine them down, have it on our property only, not to, the goal of these event centers is to bring an experience, to bring everything on site. We plan on having shuttles and chauffeurs and that type of thing that can bring people from this event center into town as well. And again, we just urge that you understand what the mayor has proposed for other event centers, what your staff has proposed, that these are a needed and a good use for the land. Thank you. Any questions at all?
Any questions for him?
I have a question, Madam Chair. Could you speak more about the restrictions that you discussed at your meeting with the neighbors? And you just referenced that you were looking at this as a conditional use situation. It's proposed as a planned unit development. And
I apologize. Yeah, my
Question.
wording was not quite right there.
what agreement was there, if any, at the neighborhood meeting regarding restrictions?
There was no set in stone anything that was discussed. It was one neighbor talking to another neighbor, trying to be good neighbors.
Did you present some?
Did not, and I want to conform to, let's just, if we pick out Emerald Pines, for example, a similar use, we would go with what they have and we'd be open to options. But that would all be discussed, if I'm right, Scott, in the next meeting, if approved, correct?
Some of it I wanted to discuss with them.
Okay. I don't know if that
Questions
answers
for
your
him?
question or not.
You mentioned that you thought Steve had some good ideas, and so as I look at his ideas, hours of operation, what would you think would be reasonable?
Yeah, I think 11:30 to midnight in that range would be a good idea. Most weddings, most people who get married, that'd be the time of operation. It'd be like an 8 a.m. to then.
And do you think you'll have sufficient parking on site so people won't park on the road?
Yeah, we've actually, and it's not pictured, but the road that comes in, the driveway approach, we've intentionally made one side for excess parking that allows diagonally down the hill. So if we do have a large event and such, we could accommodate an extra 100 cars, maybe even a little bit more than that.
Do you have any idea about the number of cars that you could handle?
Yeah, what we had Jason at HDR, and that should be on that report too, explains what this use would be. Let me find the exact wording here. Trip generation is what they use on level 3 there. The venue with 300 to 400 chairs would see 150 to 200 trips. So 150 to 200 trips is kind of what he's estimating on there. We see most of our traffic coming from Sioux Falls. I mean, right off Interstate 229 coming north there. The cemetery is gonna push a lot probably towards Cliff Avenue and move that way, so I don't know if ours would be exactly that, but.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Scott, do you want to come up to the podium and?
Once again, Scott Anderson, Planning Director. So there, Commissioner Barth made a valid point. We really have, we can address this now, or we can address it during the final development plan. So I just wanted to go over, sort of reiterate a little bit of what could be done right now, if you so desire. So if you go to the sub-area requirements, under sub-area A, which is the commercial or the events facility, under item 3, it says parking regulations. You may want to add a sentence that says no parking on Slip Up Creek Road. That would take care of one of the concerns that was brought up. And then under item 6, where it says other regulations, which would apply to that area, may want to add something like a condition D, which would be hours of operation shall be between 8 a.m. and 11:30 p.m. Item E, all lighting has to be the shoebox style type that we require and pointed downward, so no light spills off the property, which the applicant indicated would be acceptable. And then item F, you may want to add something that says, like, no outdoor music shall be allowed after 9 p.m. That may satisfy or, address some of the concerns from the neighborhood that you heard. So I'm just saying that those are options that are open to you. And I'd be glad to answer any other questions. I know my concern here is that we've sort of commingled the cemetery and this use, and really this is a hearing on this events facility, not a hearing on the cemetery, because that's a permitted use in the ag district. There was never a hearing. That was misrepresented to the audience, that they didn't get to attend a hearing. I didn't either, because there was never a hearing on that cemetery. It's a permitted use, so I just wanted to make sure that was clear. And the applicant did correctly identify that the number of proposed funerals are approximately 250 a year. They do not have funerals on Saturday and Sunday, which will benefit the applicant, because that's probably his prime time is going to be Saturdays, is going to be one of his major days. They don't hold funerals, and that was told to me by the state people that are involved with this. I have said on meetings with that. There are no funerals on Saturday or Sunday.
You stay there a minute. There's some people that have a question for you.
So is there a security management plan put in place for the alcohol?
Well, they have to obtain some kind of a liquor license from the county, and they are vetted through our auditor's office to make sure that they are, able to hold a liquor license. But as part of that, and that's not really my area of expertise, that's out of the auditor's office, I don't believe that they have to provide any kind of a security plan when you apply for a liquor license. And Commissioner Barth may be able to better relay. I don't know if there's any liquor licenses that are left in the county available.
There are none. We're sold out, and if there was one, it'd be $250,000.
So they would only be able to get malt, wine, and beer license, I believe, is all that would be available. Sometimes there is hard alcohol served at these venues, and it's because the caterers, like Hy-Vee has one, and they are able to come out and they have a liquor license, and they can get a special, like a 3-day temporary event license. So that's not to say that you might not have hard alcohol sold, distributed out there or used, so.
Scott, I have a question. So let's say that there was a restriction that things should end at 11 o'clock, okay? If things were going well, and can that be appealed by the operator? I mean, those kinds of restrictions?
Well, yes, and when you mean
let's say
appealed at a later date?
at a later date, 6 months down the road, things have been going well.
Well, we wouldn't call that an appeal. It would be an amendment to the plan development. And I think that's what the applicant alluded to with the residential component to this, is that maybe, you know, in 15 or 20 years, the future growth patterns of the city will be such that it would be more appropriate to have residential development there. The applicant can always come in, let's say in 20 years, 15 years, and go through an amendment process to add the residential component. When you go through an amendment process, for those in the audience, so this is for everyone's education and benefit, when you go through an amendment process, it's like starting all over again. There's hearing notices that are sent out to the neighbors, the adjacent property owners. There's notices published in the paper, and then there's a notice posted on the property. So we attempt to go through that process again to make sure everyone's aware, to the best of our ability, that there is an amendment request that's somehow going to change the components of the plan development.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I have a question. Scott, could you talk about the traffic study specific to this application?
Well, specific to the application, I will just indicate that HDR prepared the study. They're qualified engineering company to do traffic studies. They prepared a study, they did some traffic counts, and that information is in your packet. I'm not going to say whether it was addressed all the issues or didn't, because, you know, I don't want to second guess their work, but they prepared the study as you requested, and it's included in your packet.
Anyone else? Scott?
Thanks.
I'm going to close the floor.
Madam Chair, if I might, I actually have talked to our highway superintendent about this, and I also talked to Mr. Tunison, who's with the Purple Heart Association. And the federal government is going to pave the roads inside the cemetery. They won't pave anything outside. That said, there is interest at the state level in taking care of this. Secretary Berquist has been talking to our highway superintendent, and you know, it would be a complete rebuild, because what's there is not up to the standard that they need. And so I think that there's a good chance that the state will come in and do this. That said, I'm sure that the county and the township would have some input in this, and I certainly appreciate the township, Mr. Oschlager, commenting on it. So I think there is hope that this would get upgraded, whether or not the event center is put there, because and I drove this on Christmas Day. My wife and I decided to see what might be open, and nothing was open on that road, but we drove it anyway. And I know the idea about going down that hill, going to the north there, where it's steep and icy possibly. But I think there is a chance that this will get a paved road at some point in the future. I think it's kind of bold to try to put one there before it's paved. But that's just some other info I have, I guess.
City side have any comment?
What do you guys think?
Jeff?
You're looking at me.
Okay, Doug.
Yeah, I got just a couple things to say. Nothing major. I'm not holding against anybody, neighbors. You know, you guys are just lucky that nobody built the hog confinement there 10 years ago. What would you be saying then? You know, and then also be a proponent for their venue If it's so many young families out there, chances are maybe your son, daughter would want to have their wedding reception there too. And would you be that naive to say, no, you can't because we were against them? I don't think so. So I'm all in favor of it.
Adam, any comment?
I mean, I really like it. It's a nice place down there. I visited. I think it's a great place for a wedding hall down there.
Mike?
Excuse me, I'm not gonna say the exact same tune, but no, I think it is an appropriate use. I think the petitioner's done his due diligence, and is, obviously done what we requested him to do. So I'm in favor of it.
Ryan, you have any comment? I'll leave you out.
I think Sioux Falls is gonna go that way eventually anyway, so.
Madam Chair, I have a question again for Scott, if he could
Sure.
respond to what he started on, which was a list of conditions or restrictions. So you've obviously been contemplating that question.
I was making some notes while people were speaking.
And how does that process continue from what might be acted on this evening? And if it was to approve the preliminary application in the final design, or the final development plan?
So as I sort of envisioned this, or I could contemplate that you would potentially add these conditions, whatever conditions you see fit. I indicated about the parking under item 3, and then maybe some conditions under item 6 that dealt with hours of operation, lighting, and to some, if you would like to address the outdoor music. And once you would add those conditions to the area regulations, if the recommendation was for approval, well, or denial, it makes no difference. But if you recommended approval with adding these conditions, the added conditions would be brought forth to the joint city-county meeting, which Commissioner Duffy indicated was, I think, the February 26th meeting, which she read aloud. And then there'd be hearing at that joint city-county meeting on what your proposed conditions are.
So your staff recommendation is for the commercial and the agricultural sections of the
Only.
proposed plan development unit, and an initial list, as you indicated, of conditions which may or may not be added to by the time the final plan recommendation was brought forward?
Well, so I would take these proposed area regulations that we adopt, that you would and recommend tonight, that they would go forth and would be part of the hearing at the joint city-county meeting. The city council and the county commission, at that meeting, they may want to further tweak these or add conditions, which they have the right to do.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Commissioners? Jeff?
I guess, is there any more input from the city on this at this point?
Well, I'd be in favor myself of adding conditions now rather than trying to add them farther down the road. I think it makes it a little easier for the neighbors and the applicant all to remove conditions as things are improved and as it appears that things are working out well than it is to add them at a later time. So since the petitioner seems to be receptive to some of those conditions discussed, it makes some sense to me to go ahead and add them in this case.
So Sean, do you have a list of them? I know Mr. Bechtold had talked about hours of operation, outdoor events, litter control, parking on the road, I guess light pollution, and also some respect for funeral processions. I don't know if Steve had any other ones of those, but is that the ones we're thinking?
Yeah, the ones that Scott kind of outlined made some sense to me if we are specific about the
Do we
motion,
put
Jeff.
them in now then, Scott, or
Prefer you put them in now. That's my preference.
can you give us some legal,
Well, I think, I'll
words
go
on
over
it?
them again.
Yeah.
So, under sub-area A, which is, let me
Yeah.
get to the map here. Sub-area A, which is the commercial, under the area regulations number 3, which it says parking regulations, I would add the sentence, "No parking shall be allowed on Slip Up Creek Road." That's pretty simple. Then we would go to,
Question on that.
yeah.
So the neighbors wouldn't be able to park there either.
No, just, that would be the area regulations for this venue. We're not regulating what the neighbors do.
You're saying Slip Up Creek Road, that's pretty broad.
No, I'm just saying that this proposed use in sub-area A, that they would not be allowed that only applies to sub-area A. And that
Okay.
doesn't apply to what these neighbors do.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that, yeah.
Yeah. And then, so if this road gets reconstructed, can they come back and basically take this off if it allows parking on the side?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you know,
'Cause you're-
in the reality of it, I don't see, wedding guests walking down a road, you know, a quarter mile down to a venue. They're just not gonna do it, but, I think that, I don't see it as really an issue, but potentially, yes, they could come back later and amend this if they build, rebuild Slip Up Creek Road and there's curb and gutter and sidewalk, they could park there, I suppose.
So sub-area 3, sub-area A, item 3, you just add, no parking on Slip Up Road.
That's correct. No parking shall be allowed on Slip Up Creek Road.
Okay. What about outdoor events?
So I would go down to 6, where it says other regulations. And that's where I would start adding D, E, and F. And D would be hours of operation shall be, and I think the applicant indicated 8 AM to 11:30 PM, but it's whatever hours you decide.
Wanna discuss that right now?
Well,
I think 11:30 is late enough, I guess, for a wedding.
Adam, you're saying 11:30?
Yeah, I think 11:30 is fine.
I think most weddings I go to are midnight.
Yeah.
I mean, hours of operations are really restricting a business on what they can do. And typically, most weddings I've ever been to go to midnight. And if they wanna have an event in the morning, I mean,
So it sounds like consensus is 11:30 at this point.
I'm fine with
Well,
midnight.
12 o'clock.
Saying
Midnight?
is basically,
Okay.
We're talking 12 here.
yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, and then I would add a condition number E, which would which is our standard wording that we use, all lighting shall be the shoebox style and directed downward so no light spills off the property. And item number F, no outdoor music shall be allowed after whatever time you feel is appropriate to buffer for the neighbors. 9 PM, I don't know.
Their county ordinance?
No, there is no county noise ordinance.
Okay. What's the city ordinance? Is it 10? And then like 11 on the weekend? Okay. Okay.
Just 'cause it's over.
What was the consensus on that then?
I think city ordinance makes sense.
10?
That was the conditions that I thought were appropriate to add. I'm leery about making the applicant pick up litter on Slip Up Creek Road when you don't know if it's from his guests or other guests. And then secondly,
I have to agree with you on that one, Scott. Considering they've already said they have an issue with
Yeah.
people throwing mattresses and stuff, I don't feel it's
appropriate.
to
Same thing
make
with the
the,
person at a gate. I don't,
and then the other issue was, I don't know how you legislate I don't know how I would word that you have to show respect to a funeral procession, and so that, I'm not sure how you would do that. If you would like, you certainly could, but,
I would guess personally that the applicant could put a sign up for people leaving their site saying, if a funeral procession is in progress, please pause and wait for them to pass, or something like that, and do it more of a self-managed approach.
I think a self-managed approach is fine. I just don't want to get into regulating freedom of speech. And, you know, you could have, there are groups of people that like to protest funerals, and, I don't know, I just don't want to, I don't think we should be regulating freedom of speech.
Scott, I got just one thing. Do we want to put anything in there about dust control?
If you did, you could, you could make that a G, but
It wasn't a condition of his driveway permit or?
Yeah, Scott, I
Yeah,
think that was already a
that
condition,
was
wasn't it, with
with the
Mapleton
township.
Township?
We like that, yes,
Oh, okay.
readily agreed to that. It would be
Let's
better
put
if it
that in as G.
Okay.
you could put it in as
Dust
G.
control.
But then you need to be specific on where the dust control from his driveway to,
The pavement.
to the pavement, is that where you want it? To the west, from his driveway west to the pavement, dust control.
Nope.
Okay, we'll add that as a G then. If it's paved, then that would imply that the dust control's being done. Okay. Anything else?
Thanks, Scott.
Madam Chair, I would propose approval of the staff recommendations with the addition of D, E, F, and G added as to sub-area A.
You doing A and B or A, B, and C?
Well, I was going to do staff recommendations on A, B, and C, which are approval, and denial.
Yeah. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve this item with adding no parking on Slip Up Creek to item 3, and then D, E, and F and G as discussed.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Pass those as set.
Thank you.
So this item, just so the audience knows, this item will be heard by the Joint City-County Commission at February 26th at 5 PM, and that's at the Carnegie Town Hall, so.
Thanks, Scott. There is no old business, there's no new business. Need a motion to adjourn.
5 PM.
Move adjournment of our joint city-county planning commission.
I'll second.
All those in favor on the county side? Motion passes.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Adjourn.